Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Bonnie Stewart. She's Vice President of CBIA, that's Connecticut Business and Industry Association. It's her first time on the show. We'll meet her when we come back, so stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Bonnie Stewart, Vice President of CBIA, Connecticut Business and Industry Association. It's a lot easier just to say the letters than it is the full name. First of all, Bonnie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us what CBIA is.
CBIA is the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, and we represent roughly 10,000 businesses in Connecticut, from the small corner shop with one person to our largest employers. And we advocate on behalf of the businesses to try to make sure that we have an economy here in Connecticut that encourages business development, business incentive, that brings all of us opportunities.
Are you all encompassing as far as statewide?
We do cover the entire state.
Okay. What's the difference between an organization like this and, say, like maybe there are many other business associations, primarily being, chambers of commerce and that sort. What would be the difference between this and maybe, say, a chamber of commerce? Right.
We do have a number of chambers in the state. I believe over 100 actually. And what the chambers generally do is focus in on local issues, whereas Connecticut Business and Industry Association, we tend to, from a public policy perspective, advocate on behalf of our members up at the state legislature. We don't tend to get involved in what's happening at City Hall. We cover the state as a whole, make sure that the state agencies and the legislature are passing measures that are positive and hopefully stopping anything that's negative. We also do a number of other things for our members, and we're able to do that just because we're larger. We've got greater staff. So we help them with questions that they may have, such as what's the best practices when you're hiring somebody? What can we do to retain our employees? What might I look into to help reduce my energy costs? So we try to make sure that we address their needs where there's been a demonstrated need and where we can add value.
And like you said, the Chamber of Commerces are more regional based. They do their sort of communities or their area of influence, and there are many of them throughout the state. You're all encompassing. Again.
Right.
Now, how was it decided way back when that an organization, an association like this was necessary for businesses?
Well, I'd love to tell you how everything started, but actually CBIA started nearly 200 years ago.
You can't go back that far?
So I can't go back that far, but as the Connecticut Manufactorees Association. So it was way back when it was decided that for some reason manufacturers needed someone to help advocate on their behalf. And my guess is that's because that's when a lot of different laws were first being adopted. So we've been around for a long, long time. So can't go into great detail about the start of it, other than we started off as a manufacturing association, and that continues to be a large part of our base in terms of our membership. But as times change, in order to be worthwhile, add value, you need to change. And so CBIA's continue to change what our focus is. I shouldn't say we've changed our focus. Our focus is always Connecticut businesses, but we've changed in terms of what we need to do to meet the needs of businesses as their needs have changed.
Yeah, so you've evolved to meet the needs of the businesses. And this is a question that I seem to ask because of the times that we live in, meaning economic times. Something like CBIA is probably more important and more necessary than ever in a time of economic unrest, I guess.
I would say definitely, because a lot of people, and particularly public officials, are not aware of what happens on a day-to-day basis, the different decisions that our business leaders have to make, and the commitments that those business leaders make to Connecticut and the communities that they're in. So it's really important that we touch base with those public officials, whether it be the commissioners, staff at a particular agency, the legislature, or the governor, to make sure that they're aware of the different issues that Connecticut businesses are facing. Because for the businesses and the state to succeed as a whole, we need that private sector investment. So we need to have that constant communication to make sure that Connecticut remains viable when it comes to keeping and attracting businesses.
Now, when you say you kind of keep legislatures, kind of involved and plugged in and kind of have their ear. Do you lobby on behalf of businesses as far as policy change and things of that sort?
Yes, we do. We actually have quite a few different task forces and councils at CBIA, such as a tax committee, a human resources roundtable, where we receive input from our members on a regular basis about a different regulation or state legislation or something that may be happening in another state that they'd like to see here in Connecticut. So it's our job to make sure we stay in touch with members, find out what their needs are, and then convey those needs to both the legislators as well as the administration, whether it be the state agency or the governor himself.
It's interesting, you kind of keep tabs on what's going on the neighbor states to see if there's anything that they might do that might be appropriate for Connecticut, and you can kind of adapt that for our needs.
Absolutely. We pay attention not only to our neighbor states, but the country as a whole, because it is a global economy now. We also pay attention to a lot of what's happening in Europe and Mexico as well. It's really important because, again, it's a global economy. So we find that we do compete with some states, such as Massachusetts or New York, but we also compete with Michigan, Virginia, South Carolina. So it's important that we stay on top of what's happening in those states to make sure that we don't fall behind.
Do you get involved? Do you intermingle, or is there a mutual benefit to being involved with other business association type things? Not maybe Chamber of Commerce, but things of that sort?
Yes, there's pretty much a CBIA in nearly every other state, and being able to talk to our colleagues of those different associations, find out what the hot topics are in their state, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, that's always very helpful. Oftentimes we'll find that we think we've got a great idea and we pass a law to make sure that we have that positive outcome. It doesn't always get interpreted in the courts the way you think it's going to be, or even by an administrator, so we need to stay on top of it. If it's something that's been adopted in another state prior to coming to Connecticut, it means we've got that history in the other state that we can use to learn from, and hopefully not have to make some of those same mistakes. So making sure we know what's going on in other places is extremely important for Connecticut.
A while back there was a position that the state created called business advocate. It didn't last very long. Obviously budget cuts probably affected that position going away, but there were, it seemed like a good idea, but then there were others who would say, well, that's what your local, representative should be there for. You should go to him, and there shouldn't have to be this position available. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think for a long time people felt that our State Department of Economic and Community Development was not assisting businesses to the extent they could have. And it was believed in large part because of a lot of things that were happening within state agencies that business ombudsman person was extremely important. And it was. We had a gentleman, a former congressman by the name of Rob Simmons, have that spot. And he did an excellent job. When a business ran into a problem, he would find out what it was and say they were having an issue at the then Department of Environmental Protection because a permit wasn't being denied, it was just not being acted on, and therefore
slow moving.
Exactly, which can be extremely problematic. So Mr. Simmons would get involved and help move things along, or say the person just had a question but they couldn't get an answer after they called 4 different state agencies and kept on getting bounced from one to the next. He'd get involved, get the answer for them right away. And that was definitely a real positive factor, not only for the businesses, but again, if a business is not operating well, it means that they don't have the same ability to maintain the employees they have or to grow. And that's what we want to do. We want to take the businesses that are in Connecticut and help them thrive. So it was a real plus for the state. They did eliminate it in part for budgetary reasons. But since then, they have not added it back, I think in large part because the Department of Economic and Community Development, DECD, has been going through some restructuring themselves. And we have a new commissioner who is very dedicated. We have a governor who places a high value on the Department of Economic and Community Development, has that commissioner right in his inner circle, and that's extremely important. So I think Catherine Smith, the new commissioner of DECD, has done a great job on her own of advocating, and she's given greater ability to her staff to advocate on behalf of businesses, et cetera, too. So they're really changing things a lot within the state to try to reduce some of the burdens of, one, finding out what the state can offer or do, training programs they have, different opportunities. And so the need for the ombudsman, I'm not going to say it's left us, but it definitely, the need has diminished somewhat because we do have a DECD that's really stepping up to the plate now.
And that position was kind of created out of thin air in a sense. It didn't exist before, at least in that capacity. So, you know, it might be tough to argue its return in that sense. But since that position and that person doesn't exist anymore, would these businesses that needed a place to turn, could they turn to CBIA and kind of get help in that respect?
Our members do give us buzzes all the time, whether it be to help them with an issue they've got at the Department of Labor, the new Department of Environmental and Energy Protection, or the Department of Revenue Services. We do that all the time for our members. They'll give us a call, and we've developed relationships there so we can pick up the phone and get an answer to a tax question, find out you know, what forms have to be filled out for a waiver at the Department of Labor, different things like that. Absolutely, we are there for them.
All right, let's take a break. We've got a lot more to get to. So is there a website people can go and learn a little bit more about CBIA?
Absolutely, www.cbia.com.
All right, very simple. Go there, check it out. Bonnie Stewart, the Vice President of CBIA, Connecticut Business and Industry Association. We'll take a break and come back. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay with us. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Bonnie Stewart, Vice President of CBIA, that's Connecticut Business and Industry Association. We mentioned the website before we went to the break. What exactly is on the website for people to go and see?
Our website is just jam-packed with information. Luckily, it's laid out in a user-friendly way, but we have a lot of things that are going on at the Capitol. So we've got government issues and politics. We've got a human resources section to our website, which will help anybody better understand our state laws, both the requirements of businesses as well as best practices, which are always very important. We've got an economics page, a page to help people understand the different issues that the state faces in terms of our economy. And some information to help them become better informed there as well. So that's a really great piece to our site. We do a great job of gathering different stories about Connecticut in the news, particularly as it relates to politics, as well as nationally. And we have a place people can go each morning to find out what the headlines are, which I think is extremely helpful. And we've got more information as well about the different products and services that we offer to our members.
Is CBIA plugged into social media?
Yes, we are.
You have to be, right?
Absolutely. And once you've been on Twitter, how do you stop?
Twitter and Facebook are almost necessities. You could argue that's equally, if not more important than the regular website if you want to reach people, because that's where they are.
I find that I use it constantly just because when you're on the go and you need information, it's a great way to stay informed with quick news bursts. And if you need more information, you can get it. But you don't have to spend the day combing through all of the papers. It's important to touch on them, but it's a good way to find out what's happening in all four corners of our state.
So let's talk about a subject now that is it's dire in a couple of areas of the state and so important to get back on track, and that is education. So
absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit.
Good. Yes, education is extremely important, hopefully to everybody in the state, particularly to businesses in the state, because let's face it, the students now are our future workforce.
Right.
And Connecticut, unfortunately, has a lot of failing school districts right now. We used to be a leader in education, and I think many of us always think that we still are. And it wasn't until recently that I learned that we are not, and we are dropping rapidly. The rate of students that are not graduating from high school continues to increase. Those students that are graduating but don't have the basic skills they need to either enter college or the workforce continues to increase. So overall, it's not a good situation. We need to do something now. We can't wait. And we always say that because in our office the other day, we were looking at some of our old commercials, our old ads. We came across one from 1993, which was pushing for education reform. And you could run that exact ad today and not have to change anything.
So nothing has changed then?
Nothing has changed, and that's nearly 20 years. And in those 20 years, you can say something's changed. We continue to have lower and lower outcomes, and that's not what we want. So luckily for the state, the governor has said, hey, we can't wait, let's do something about it. We have got one of the best and brightest in terms of a new education commissioner with Stephen Pryor. and he has worked with the administration to put together this package, and they presented it to the legislature. It was a fantastic package in that it would help both students and teachers in terms of the supports they would receive to make sure that we had people graduating with the skills they needed. And if they were running into problems, it would identify them early, give them the assistance to bring up either their teaching skills or if they're a student to bring up their academic skills. A lot of great things. Unfortunately, our education committee really did a disservice to the state by changing the governor's package and removing some of the key reforms. So the governor's working very hard right now to get those measures restored, as are a number of people, including CONCAN, which is out there fighting for students, CBIA, which we'd like to believe that we're fighting for the children, but let's face it, we're fighting for our future workforce.
Right.
And there's a number of different groups involved, but it's an extremely important issue, and it's one that we need more people to get involved in and understand that we really need it for Connecticut.
There's a couple of pockets of real trouble. New London is one of them. Bridgeport is one of them.
Yes.
I guess larger, on the larger side cities, a lot of cities where just the population is larger, and you also have a cross section of of low and high incomes. Anything like that, you're going to run the risk of I guess in this case, the school system, unfortunately, is just a big letdown. And
not only that, you can have a district that's in trouble, but you can have a school that's excelling because they've found a right way to work.
Right.
I believe that Norwich would want to be one of those areas. There's a lot of schools in Norwich that need assistance. There are a lot of students in Norwich that need assistance. Yet Norwich has Norwich Free Academy as a vanguard school, one of the high schools in the country that's viewed as a model. So it's not that a certain town may be a problem, but we have districts or areas that are in trouble, and as you point out, many of them are the urban centers, but they're not all urban centers. It's something that should alarm everyone, just because, again, our graduation rates are dropping. And the number of students that graduate from Connecticut high schools that have to take remedial courses in college, I'm not sure of the exact number now, but I believe as of last year, it was 33%. So roughly 1/3 of the students that were graduating from Connecticut high school had to take high school classes when they got to college. That's a problem. So we need to make sure that we're giving the children of Connecticut the education they deserve, which is definitely much better than the ones most of them are receiving now.
Yeah, and if someone's just tuning in and they're wondering what education has to do with a show talking about business, like you said, it's our future. They will be running these businesses down the road, and
absolutely,
we want them to be up to snuff for the job, so to speak.
And a lot of employers right now are holding remedial classes just on basics like math and reading skills. So we need to do something. It's really important to the future of Connecticut, both to those individual students, their parents, and let's face it, it should be to us as a society as a whole, because there are definite studies that show a direct correlation between people's reading levels in 3rd grade and whether or not they're going to end up in prison and stuff. It's pretty alarming. So it's in all of our best interest to make sure that we provide Connecticut students with the education, not only that they need, but they deserve to succeed.
Let's talk about something else, and that's maybe policy change. When you're talking about, because you mentioned lobbyists and just policy change in general. What's going on as far as CBIA in that category?
Right. We cover a number of different issues for our members because they obviously are impacted by a lot of different topics. So whether it be education, which we're very active in, or healthcare. Most employers provide their employees with healthcare, so it's a big cost for Connecticut employers.
What about those that don't?
In terms of our membership, we have very few that don't. And Connecticut as a whole actually is one of the states that has a much higher rate of coverage than other states. One of the things that's leading to that don't population, though, is the number of state mandates our legislature passes. And that's a big problem because we have a number of legislators that on one hand are saying, oh, the cost of health coverage is too high. But each year they pass new mandates, new requirements in terms of what must be covered and who must be covered. So the types of of providers and what they must, provide. When you do that, you continuously drive up the cost of healthcare.
For the businesses that are providing the health
and
care.
the individuals,
Yeah.
whether it be co-pays or if they're self-insured individuals or people that are purchasing it on their own because they're not employed. So you have this real problem where you've got legislators saying healthcare costs are too high, but they're the ones driving them up in large part. So one of the things we've been spending a lot of attention on is trying to get legislators to better understand that they are one of the biggest problems when it comes to the cost of healthcare, that they're driving it up. I think they've started to listen this year in that we have far fewer health mandates moving their way through the process this year. Unfortunately, I can't tell you that we don't have any. I do believe we have either, you could say 4 if you talk about both new coverage as well as expanded coverage. But that's a big issue for Connecticut. So healthcare mandates are a big issue. I think one thing that we're all seeing is that the federal healthcare law, the Obamacare package, is actually requiring the states to do a number of things. Connecticut's far ahead of most states when it comes to, again, the mandates that we already have, et cetera, but we've got to put together this healthcare exchange so that the people that don't currently have healthcare have a place to go to get it and move forward. So we have to see how everything falls out at the federal level because of the court case, challenging parts of the Obama
Businesses are
healthcare.
concerned about that, right? Like their costs as far as
Right.
the federal mandated aspects of it.
But the long and short of it is, the more expensive you make healthcare, the fewer people have the coverage. And we find that actually a lot of young and healthy people don't get the coverage because they get young
don't
and
need it.
invincible.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's a problem because you never know when you're going to be sick or get in an accident. And then when they are hurt and don't have the health insurance to cover
Someone
it,
else pays for
we
it.
end up paying for it.
Right.
The long and short is the people that have insurance are significantly subsidizing anybody that's on government insurance, so Medicaid, Medicare, or those that don't have it at all. So it would be in all of our best interests to see the insured population increase because in the end that would drive down everyone's costs.
From your perspective, from the business perspective, you know, we always talk about the recession and the economy
Right.
the way it is now. Can you see a light at the end of the tunnel? Can you see us coming out of it? Whether, even if it's not business in general, but maybe if you want to say the beginning of the downfall was maybe the housing market, that was an
Right.
initial indicator. Maybe if you see that start to pick up, maybe that domino affects others. But can you see it, us coming out of it at all, or do you still see us kind of in it for a little bit longer period of time?
Well, when I'm sleeping and I'm dreaming,
Yeah.
I can't say that I have any clear indication that we'll be out of it soon. We are hearing from a number of our members that they actually have positions to employ people that they cannot fill because they can't find people with the right skills right
But
now.
it's good that they're looking to hire, though.
Exactly, but we need to make sure that they stay in Connecticut
Right.
with those positions. So we need to make sure that if we have needs, for example, skilled workers, that the vocational technical schools are producing those
That's where the
those
education
workers.
comes into play.
Exactly. So we need to make sure that more is being done to make sure that we've got the skilled workers. Manufacturers in particular are having a hard time finding the people they need. And it's not the manufacturing world of 200 years ago when we
Right.
first started.
Right.
You need people that have math skills to be able to run the computers, et cetera, that the advanced manufacturing facilities have, as well as people with the reading skills that are necessary to operate those computers, the ability to read blueprints, different things like that. So it's something that we're paying close attention to. We're fortunate at CBIA, we actually have an education foundation that works with our members to try to find out what needs exist. So for an example, we know that there's a real need in the energy and green industry areas for skilled workers. We also know that the people that want these jobs don't have the math skills they need. So we put together a consortium, we've got grant money, and we're working now in 6-week courses to educate people to bring up their math skills. We just finished our first course this past Friday. We've got 2 more coming up, so hopefully we can find the people that are looking for jobs, get them those additional math skills they need to then enter the green and energy career fields.
And on that note, we are out of time, unfortunately. So we'll put the graphic up on the screen for the website one more time. Bonnie Stewart, Vice President of CBIA, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. We will see you next time. Take care.